Good day and welcome back to another World of Warcraft video. In this video we're going to be taking a look at basically my 5 biggest reasons to be excited for the War Within and obviously to consider returning to the War Within. So obviously right now it's pre-patch, we've got about 16 days, 17 days depending on your time zone, and this video is unlocking as to the arrival of the War Within. But I think a lot of people are very excited, and this video is to go through some of the reasons why you should maybe consider rejoining. So one of the main reasons to be excited, as always, is class reworks. But reworking your class is not just the only thing that has come to World of Warcraft, but the new hero talent system. Now the hero talent system is essentially a new way to refine your playing style once you get to your specs end goal point. So instead of just being an arms warrior, you're going to have the ability to further refine whether that arms warrior basically deals damage through certain methods. It is the same for every single class. So I may be a destruction warlock, but will I be one that deals damage through AoE rains of fire? Or will I be one that deals incredibly high single target damage? It's going to be very interesting to see, and each class will be able to really diversify their playing style once they start hitting the hero talents, which will begin pretty early on into the War Within expansion. It's something that's going to be very new and is going to require a bit of balancing, but I think ultimately it's going to provide a new, very distinct way to diversify your playing style. It's fully changeable, so like most talents, it's not something that's locking you in, hard locking you, so it enables you to further create a new way of playing with that DPS. So historically, instead of being curtailed and tied into being single target or AoE from the very beginning, you will be able to hopefully be able to choose for yourself, and the same goes for pretty much every single class to a certain extent in diversifying their playing style. Are you going to up your heals over time or create more instant healing? Will you be a tank that survives through barriers, or will you increase the amount of raw armor and avoidance you have? There's lots of really cool, interesting ways that are going to be able to be played with. The next super big change, and it's going to affect everything ranging from collection of transmogs, the achievement of your account, and on top of all of that, of course, sharing of resources, is Warbands. Now this already exists in the game. We are actually being able to kind of test this out a little bit through the new latest event, but essentially, to cut a long story short, it's going to change things dramatically. Not only from the fact that you can now very easily pool your character's resources, whether that is things like gold, and being able to, of course, share armor that you pick up, as well as also materials, which will enable those who are obviously benefiting from crafting. But it's very big because you can also translate currencies, and reputations are shared. So it's very, very interesting, and more of these are going to be added in later on. But the entire functionality of War Within has been changed, essentially to prioritize a more account-wide focus than a singular character focus for things like resources and currencies. Now, not everything will be able to be transferred. Some will be added in a later date. I know Honor right now is one of those ones that people are very interested in knowing for a PvP perspective, but we can already see how the transfer system works. Certain currencies will have penalizations, but for the most part, players will be able to transfer currencies freely, and this benefits them from things like time walking, where you're now going to be able to essentially transfer yourself time walking badges to better attain mounts and other great rewards, to just in general having an easier time pooling your resources on your characters and making your life a lot easier. The gear aspect is also very big, although not being able to trade fully meta gear, you'll be able to trade quite good gear depending on how far you go in the game, and this could really change up how people gear up ults, guilds, and more. One of the big changes that has come to the game, of course, is obviously delves. Now, delves don't currently exist in World of Warcraft. They are, at this moment in time, of course, essentially, I want to say, a feature that is clearly tied to the War Within, but delves are very similar to the islands that you have come across in the BFA expansion. Delves are incredibly similar to the singular instance-based content, very scalable content that allows players to have a very high sense of scalability. And one of the things that Delves gives is really a single player centric way to achieve certain in-game goals and gear and metrics. Now, we don't know how they will be balanced and adjusted. I mean, obviously from the beta, people know roughly how they play out, but we don't know if they will expand upon this, how deep they'll make it go, and what it could lead to. But delves, for the most part, are definitely something that is prioritizing single player in-game, and I think ultimately is a really, really good feature. It's a way as well for you to play with scalability. If you have one or two friends and you can't form a dungeon group, delves are going to be the way to go. They can scale up to 5, which means they are a viable replacement for dungeons if maybe you are looking for something that's a little bit different. Now, they don't play out exactly like dungeons. They are a little bit closer, like I said, to kind of scenarios where there's different alternating objectives and things. But at the end of the day, they are a great new source of content, and I think players should really try them out. Right now, there's nothing outside of the beta to represent them, but in general, they look like really, really fun content. Leveling changes. Now, as always, leveling is a big topic of discussion. There's always level cap changes, level reworks, leveling scaling, and just in general, always big revamp that comes to leveling with every single expansion. This one is no different. Every area now goes from 10 to 70, and players start automatically at level 10 outside of their initial change or character that will start at Exile's Island, the tutorial zone. For the different expansions, they each run 10 to 70, and you can access any of them from the very beginning of the game by talking to Chromie for your Time Walking campaign. For new players, the default campaign will be set to Dragonflight, and I do suggest players really start with this, as although it is the set default area, it obviously has the most story relevance towards the War Within. But with this big change, leveling your characters, especially right now, has become incredibly easy. Between the Mr. Pandaria remix event and the current pre-patch event, leveling a character from 1 to 70 can take a matter of hours, sometimes even just an hour and a half, and it does not take you long. So if you are someone who's looking to come back to World of Warcraft, not only to try out their old characters, but maybe to try out something new, this is a great time to level, and in future during the War Within, the leveling process will be much more streamlined, giving players a much better basis upon which to get themselves up to that new point. Speaking of popular changes, crafting and professions once again will take a change in the War Within, and a lot of the improvements are for better. The inspiration mechanic that a lot of players did not really enjoy from the aspect of Dragonflight essentially will be adjusted and changed into concentration, which will be a much easier mechanic for players to deal with. There have also been changes to the tiers of materials that players will be able to farm and deal with, and the balancing of the changes will all be done to better streamline player progression. Not to mention, there was a feeling in BFA, in Dragonflight, we're working through too many expansions, but there was a feeling in Dragonflight that catching up in terms of materials was incredibly difficult. Not only did players have to a certain degree, deal with the aspects of farming the materials themselves, but also had to deal with the aspect that they essentially, to cut a long story short, we're going to struggle to catch up in terms of game knowledge. So farming materials has become a different story in War Within. The process of obtaining knowledge for your professions has become different in War Within, and the new concentration mechanic helps to circumvent some of the pain that players felt with inspiration and random procs on gear crafting. So if you're someone who's into professions, into gathering, and just into crafting, I must admit, nice changes for War Within, for me, are building on top of the strong foundation of the interesting changes that occurred in Dragonflight. So it's definitely a great time to get back into it and take a look at things from there. And that is it for why I am at least excited for the new War Within expansion, but there's tons of reasons otherwise. I mean, I'm just talking about new and interesting changes that I really think I'm looking forward to personally. But on top of that, there's the fantastic new raids. As always, World of Warcraft I find has lovely raid mechanics, and Dragonflight was great, and I feel like they're continuing that trend inside of the space of the War Within. On top of all of that, the story looks to be really nice and set up, and we'll begin the start of the World Soul Saga, which is a new series and trilogy of expansions for Warcraft. So all in all, gotta be honest with you, there is going to be a really interesting expansion on the way. So if you guys are interested, I highly suggest you join in and get yourselves ready, because you're in for a hell of a ride. But that's it from me. Bye.